in this damn camera. Bring your ass back in this camera, Mr. Biden. Get your ass back in this camera. Y'all sit your ass down with your goofy looking ass wig. I'm sick of these damn people. This man just sat up here and said that they paying these people $8,000 just to get in our country, and if they can get in, they can do whatever the fuck they do. So if y'all know this, get your ass back on the camera. Why the fuck is y'all letting them in here and then giving them $8,000 from Mr. Biden? Sick of these motherfuckers. This man is stupid.
Yeah, that was basically all of America last night. That summed up the vast majority of Americans who have finally had it with this one and done excuse of a president. Others pointed to Speaker Mike Johnson's facial expressions throughout the night. They were absolutely classic. We are all Mike Johnson was trending on Twitter, on X. It was glorious. Even CNN, the most distrusted name in fake news, even CNN was hardly impressed. Take a look.
He talked about Snickers and snack chips before he ever got to the border. He was obsessed with his political rival more than he was obsessed with the condition of the American people. It was so weird. This guy lectures us all on unity, the soul of the nation, and he gives the most partisan convention speech in place of a State of the Union that I've ever heard. It's the literal opposite of unity. It's so partisan. He's obsessed with taunting Republicans. It's not statesmanlike.
Yeah. Well, stop. You're not supposed to say that. Read the memo. Biden. What that CNN commentator is saying is absolutely true. Despite the best efforts by the legacy media to prop up this weekend at Bernie's administration, Biden's State of the Union was one massive flop after another. And I'm going to show you guys exactly why. I'm going to show you exactly what was really behind last night's speech and why it's so ominous for the Democrats going into November. Greetings, everyone. It is Live Stream Friday. I am your host, Dr. Steve, your patron professor, here to help you to think better so you can feel better in these crazy and turbulent times. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. We are live on both Rumble and YouTube. We got a jam-packed show today. I do have a hard stop today at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. I have to catch a flight to Vegas. I'm speaking tomorrow at the Replatform Vegas Convention. It's a huge gathering of parallel economy enthusiasts and entrepreneurs from around the country. I'd love to see you there if you're in the Vegas area. I'm doing a book signing there, so make sure to come up and introduce yourself. I'd love to meet you in person. And of course, has been the case over the last few months, our super chats have been disabled because we were demonetized several weeks back. But all of you have been so gracious in joining our Insiders Club to support us on a month-to-month basis as we try to work things out with YouTube. And so if you want to ask me your questions today, because I've got this hair falling down on my head. I'm losing my hair as we speak. It's so weird. Anyway, and then it gets caught on my glasses, and then it's like just... You probably all know what I'm talking about, but I'm sorry, I digress. But it's annoying the heck out of me. It's like this weird spider web on me. But if you click on the link below, just join our Insiders Club, and you can ask me all the questions you like for just $5 a month. So many of you are so kind to give me 10, 15, 20, $50 in the super chats. Normally, when you ask your questions, gang, let me return the favor for your monthly support. $5 a month. Ask me all the questions you want. Again, we have a hard stop today, so I may have to reserve those questions for Monday night at our next live stream together. That's solely for our Insiders Club. But go ahead, click on that link below, join.turleytalks.com, become a member. Again, I can't thank you guys enough. Nearly 6,000 of you have joined our Insiders Club over those last few months. And it's just absolutely, from the bottom of my heart, I can't thank you enough for how you've come to the rescue of this channel in the midst of our demonetization. Click on that link below, join our Insiders Club, and ask me all the questions you like. $5 a month. It'll be my honor to answer them here on this live stream. All right, gang, let's dive right in here. One of the things that I like to do, I've done this with Trump's State of the Union speeches in the past. I do this with Biden's. What I like to do is I like to read it before I watch it. I like to read it before so I read the transcript of the speech. It's normally up on the New York Times even before it's delivered, just an hour or so before it's delivered. I like to read it through and then go back and watch the highlights of it. And the reason I do that is because I want to get a deeper understanding of the conceptual content of what was actually said, totally irrespective of the theatrics that surrounds the State of the Union. And I did that. I read through Biden's speech, and I have to say my overall impression of it, honestly, is that the speech really does come across as nothing more than the delirious ranting of a leader bent over, staring cluelessly at the sunset of his dying empire. Pat Buchanan, who's a political hero of mine, he's long been warning us that since the end of World War II, we basically lost the soul of America. Because it was then at the end of World War II that America officially abandoned our identity as a constitutional republic. And instead, at that point, we became officially a global empire. And again, somewhat understandable. I mean, the world was devastated after World War II. Europe was destroyed. Japan was destroyed. The Soviet Union was destroyed. The United States was the sole superpower over the entire world. And we remade that world over the next few decades after our own image, right? The Marshall Plan, the rebuilding of Europe, but now as a servant, a subservient servant of the U.S. interests, the rebuilding of Japan, but now as a permanent subservient servant of U.S. interests, the building of institutions like the IMF, the World Trade Organization, the World Bank, the very institutions that gave birth to the so-called rules-based order that became the world order precisely after the fall of the Soviet Union in December of 1991. The end of World War II and its consummation with the end of the Soviet Union in 1991 represented, according to, I think, Pat Buchanan's very accurate but ominous warning, represented the end of the American Republic and the beginning of the American Empire. What we are witnessing around the world today is the end of that global empire. Now, if you're a regular to this channel, if not, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. But if you're a regular to this channel, then you know that one of our major themes is that today we are entering into what scholars are calling the age of civilizationalism. Today, all over the world, we are seeing nothing less than the great ancient civilizations of the past in almost kaiju-like fashion rising up from the depths below and returning in all of their titan splendor all over the world. Orthodox Russia, Confucian China, Hindu India, Shinto Japan, Ottoman Turkey, Shiite Iran, Pan-African Sahel region, and most especially what so many in the legacy media are freaking out over, MAGA. Make America great what? Again. See, that's the key to this civilizational renewal. Populations are going back. Populations believe that the way forward means going back to their ancient greatness. The ancient great civilizations are all rising up, and they are effectively replacing the American unipolar post-World War II rules-based order. And they were effectively replacing that unipolar rules-based order with a new civilizationalist multipolar world order. And there is literally nothing that the decrepit caretakers of the old dying unipolar empire, led by an equally dying, desperate deep state, there is nothing ultimately they can do to stop it. And what I read last night, and then what I then subsequently watched in that feeble, frail, sickly delivery, was literally nothing less than a symbol, an embodiment of precisely that dying empire. A dying empire that in its dementia, in its senility, cannot come to terms with its own impending mortality. That's what last night, for me, was ultimately all about. That's what we all witnessed last night. That's what the world witnessed last night. It was literally the end of an era. Before it even began, already pro-Palestinian protesters were lining the streets in front of the Capitol building, trying to block Biden from getting to the building. Now, keep in mind, gang, these are Democrats. If you want a sense of just how much this whole regime is crumbling, these are Democrats, Muslim Americans, Arab Americans, pro-Palestinian Americans voted for Biden by 70 points in 2020. They are now coming out as his most staunch enemy because of his support for Israel and his refusal to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. Make no mistake, the Democrat Party is shattering. It's going through a very serious civil war over all of this, and it threatens to bring the whole party down in November. So that's what we saw before the State of the Union even started. And then when it started, Biden simply superimposed that division, the very division you saw out in front of the Capitol. He simply imposed that division on the whole of the nation and the whole of the watching world. Biden began his speech, interestingly enough, with an immediate reference to World War II. But he began his speech, of course, with who else but Putin. Putin and Russia, the sworn enemy of every woke warrior in the West. And not just Putin, but Putin in comparison, of course, to Hitler. Again, this is the language of just a lagging empire, a post-World War II demolition. According to Biden, Putin violated the rules set by a nation that unfortunately continues to think it gets to set the rules for everyone else. That was Putin's ultimate sin. He violated the American-led rules-based order, and it is the job of the leaders of empire, including the subservient servants of Europe and NATO, to enforce that order, lest others think they can violate it as well. That, for Biden, was the single number one issue of his speech. The continued, relentless, multi-billion-dollar support of the glorious Democratic Republic of Ukraine in its hopeless and senseless bid in stopping Russia's assault across Europe, which anyone with even half a brain knows is not what's really happening here. The reality is, as we've talked about time and time again on this channel, as University of Chicago scholar John Mearsheimer has amply demonstrated, it was NATO, not Russia. It was NATO that encroached into Russia's sphere of civilizational influence. Russia's geographical and geopolitical sphere of hegemony was encroached on by NATO, forcing Russia to enforce that geopolitical and geographic hegemony. It's actually NATO's fault that we're seeing such horror in Ukraine today, not Putin's. But regardless, then Biden turned to the threat against the empire from abroad to here at home. I'm sorry, did I say empire? I meant democracy. That's right. Our democracy is being threatened abroad and at home. And of course, right on cue, he referred to J6. Now, remember, according to the caretakers of our dying empire, the orchestrated events of J6 are just as horrible as 9/11, if not worse. You and I are every bit an assault against the empire. There I go again. I'm sorry. You and I are every bit an assault against democracy, as is Vladimir Putin, who remembers basically Hitler. Worse, perhaps. And then he rambled on to what he called another assault on the empire. There we go again. Another assault on freedom. And that's the Supreme Court's assault on women and their right to choose. And they better think twice about doing that again. And to be honest with you, it all just frankly went downhill from there. Tucker Carlson referred to it as perhaps the darkest speech ever given by an American president. And I would argue that's because in the end, it wasn't given by an American president. That's the point we have to get here. What we saw last night, that wasn't an American president. That was the dying, degenerating leader of a dying, degenerating empire. And the world sees it, gang. Make no mistake, Orban, Putin, Xi, Erdogan, Mohammed bin Salman, Netanyahu sees it. Bukele, Maloney, they all see it. They all see a delirious leader of a delirious empire that is in the throes of its last days. Now, Tucker, of course, wasn't alone. Senator Mike Lee of Utah tweeted out that was by far the single most disastrous State of the Union address I've ever witnessed in my 52 years on this planet. President Trump, who was commenting live during the train wreck, said it took him over 40 minutes to get to immigration, then he said nothing about it. And he's right there. But I have to say, that was one of the highlights of last night for me. I want to show you who I think was the real star of last night. But first, we got a big event here on this channel next week, next Friday. We all know that despite Trump crushing it in every single poll out there, we all know the Democrats are getting absolutely desperate, especially after last night's debacle of a State of the Union. So we all know they're going to try to pull off another 2020 all over again this November. Now, I asked you all in a poll recently what topic most concerned you about the upcoming election, and it was, you blew it out of the water. 70% of you said election integrity. It does not matter how great Trump is doing in the polls if we don't get this straightened out for November. This is serious stuff, and this is officially an all-hands-on-deck code red, and that means you. As you know, we are all about action on this channel, and that's why I'm sharing 3 actionable steps you could take right now to protect the election in November. You're not going to want to miss this. This is good stuff. I shared this plan with a number of you last month, and it went over so well, we decided to do it again. Every single patriot needs to hear this message, so I'm hosting a short virtual course off platform next Friday morning, March 15th at 11 a.m. Eastern. Write that down. Next Friday morning, March 15th, 11 a.m. Eastern. And I'm going to get into the details off platform because obviously YouTube isn't going to appreciate what we have to say. Now, we're trying to limit this only to those of you who are ready to take action, like as of this Friday, or this next Friday. So there are only 250 spots total available. You don't want to wait on this. That can fill up in this next hour. So don't wait. Click on the link in the description below and register right now for a virtual seat before they all get filled up. It's vitally important that this message gets disseminated far and wide long before November so we can ride the Trump train all the way to the White House. Click on that link in the description below or go to election.turleytalks.com right now to snag a seat. All right, for me, last night, the star without question, hands down, was Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's one of the few congresswomen who's fighting to get our republic back. She wants nothing to do with the empire. She's fighting for Republican renewal and truly MAGA America First agenda. Now, of course, Marjorie Taylor Greene is a representative from Georgia. And as you know, and as we reported on this channel, a University of Georgia student named Laken Riley was murdered by an illegal immigrant a couple of weeks back. Marjorie Taylor Greene, as a representative of Georgia, did something brilliant last night. Here she is handing Biden a pin with Laken Riley's name on it.
Nobody. He don't want one. I got you, Barbara. Barbara, I got you. Mr. President. I'm smiling you. I know. How are you? Love you, Mr. President. Steve from Detroit. I know, Steve. Well, I told you before, if I had your hair, I'd have been elected earlier. Laken Riley. I know how to say the name.
Laken Riley. Say your name, Mr. President.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President. Anita, how are you? Good. I'm Steve from Detroit.
Now, during the speech, Marjorie Taylor Greene kept hounding Biden to say her name, forcing him into this pathetic embarrassment.
A winner, not really. Laken Riley, an innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of the thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand. But look, if we change the dynamic at the border, people pay these smugglers $8,000 to get across the border because they know if they get by and let into the country, it's 6 to 8 years before they have a.
I mean, seriously, what a mumbling embarrassment. Seriously. He couldn't even say her name right. Lincoln. He called Laken Riley freaking Lincoln. But to make matters even worse, just to show you how much Democrats are dedicated to this dying empire, instead of being upset at Laken's murder, or even remotely upset that Biden butchered her name, the woke left, I kid you not, is actually upset that Biden used the term illegal migrant to describe her killer. Ron McIntyre of Blaze TV had a great observation. He tweeted out, quote, "The left have settled on the narrative that the most tragic part of Laken Riley's death is Biden calling her murderer an illegal. That shouldn't surprise anyone since these are the same people who rush to correct pronouns when a trans killer shot up a Christian school." And that, for me, sums up so brilliantly the moral depravity of these people. They're more upset about the language that Biden used to designate Laken Riley's killer, alleged killer, I must say, than they are about the outrage of the murder itself. And that inverted outrage is not a coincidence. We always need to remember how wokeness works, okay? Wokeness works as a pseudo-moral system. And it works in accordance with what scholars refer to as hyper-normativity or hyper-normalization. That's a very important technical term for understanding the nature of the cultural Marxist left's infatuation with language and the words we use, whether it's pronouns or undocumented workers or whatever. So write that down, hyper-normalization. It's a term derived from studies of Russian citizens and their dispositions and inclinations towards the end of the Soviet Empire, towards its sunset. And what scholars found was that by the 70s and 80s, as the Soviet Union was beginning to wane, the vast majority of Russians knew that their political system was totally corrupt and intellectually bankrupt. They knew it, just like viewers of Biden's speech last night. They knew they were being lied to by their leaders. And most of all, they knew that their leaders knew they were lying to them. But, and this is absolutely key to get, even though everyone knew everyone was lying, the leaders continued nevertheless to lie, and the people continued nevertheless to pretend to believe in the lies, to accept the lies. In other words, the lies basically became the social capital of society to such an extent that citizens had no other possible conception of society other than one based on lies. They knew everything was a lie, but they continued to accept the system because their cognized conception of reality could conceive of no other possible reality other than a system of lies. That's hypernormativity. And the point of it all was that the people remained in the system precisely because they found it impossible to imagine an alternative system. It's the best analogy, it seems to me, would be like a failed marriage. A failed marriage that nevertheless persists because the people have no idea how to end it. That's basically what hypernormalization is. It's a fraud that has in effect been normalized in such a way that the participants in it cannot possibly conceive of an alternative reality, and thereby they remain participants. Everyone knows that the powers that be are corrupt frauds, but they put up with it because they simply can't imagine an alternative to such corruption. And it is precisely that kind of society that these woke cultural Marxists, who are so fixated on the words we use, are aiming to achieve. Here's the key. Cultural Marxists today, like the Soviet Marxists of old, this is it. Write this one down. They are deliberately attempting to fabricate society where people comply because they've lost any sense of an alternative to that compliance. I'll say that again. These cultural Marxists, like the Soviet Marxists of old, are deliberately attempting to fabricate a society where people comply with their woke nonsense precisely because the people have lost any sense of an alternative to that compliance. There's no basis for dissent. Dissension is heresy, and heretics, by definition, are excommunicated. They're cast into the darkness, and that's where, of course, cancel culture comes in. So hypernormativity or hypernormalization, it's the dynamic that explains why the left is so utterly freaked out over language. They want to create a culture of compliance that cannot conceive of any alternative to that compliance. There is no basis for dissent, period. But of course, gang, we all know that despite these Marxist efforts, we all know what ultimately happened to the Berlin Wall. We all know what ultimately happened to the Soviet Union. You see, hypernormativity in the end can buy the regime time, but it ultimately falls apart. And I'm going to show you exactly how and why it's happening right now in our time. And I'll give you a hint. The answer is you. But first, if you're just joining us, gang, if you want to ask a question because YouTube has demonetized our channel, just click on that link below and join our Insiders Club and ask me your questions through that platform. Just $5 a month. You can ask me as many questions as you like. Join.turleytalks.com. Also, with everything going on right now, you know, it's hard to say what could happen or what will happen. And to make matters even worse, we usually don't find out until it's too late. But when it comes to your money, you should understand what's at stake. So that's why I've partnered with Goldco. Now, you guys know I'm a big fan of hedging future risks with the timeless value of gold and silver. And that's why you have got to click on that link below or go to turleytalkslikesgold.com to get your free gold and silver kit. It's an amazing free resource that shows you step by step how to get into precious metals tax-free and penalty-free to protect your finances, even if your money's still in a retirement account like an IRA or 401k. And the best part, gang, is that you may already qualify to get up to $10,000 in free silver. Now, you've seen the writing on the wall. Click on that link below or go to turleytalkslikesgold.com to get your free gold and silver kit, because this is about taking back control of your privacy and your freedom. We can't predict the future, but we can prepare for it. So don't wait. Take action now to defend your freedom, your privacy, and your future. Click on that link below right now. Gang, the lesson I think we need to take with us, the history lesson here, is that there's a common reason why regimes ultimately fall. Remember, just like we're seeing today, regimes can look very formidable, very impressive, and impenetrable, in fact. I'm having my Biden moment. They can look unassailable. And this is, of course, because they occupy all the levers of cultural power. And in exercising all the levers of cultural power, there's a sense that there's no escape, that we're basically locked in a totalitarian prison. And the perception is there's simply no way out. And I know a lot of you feel that way. I know. You tell me. But I want you to take heart in history. There is a dynamic, an ultimately fatal dynamic for all illegitimate regimes, that governments and tyrannical states simply can't control. And this is the dynamic known as delegitimation. Now, delegitimation is the process whereby institutions, regulations, and authorities increasingly lose their legitimacy. That is, their trust, their confidence in the eyes of more and more populations. And we are seeing that here. Back in 2010, pollster Scott Rasmussen and Doug Schoen published a study evidencing a major paradigm shift taking place among the American electorate. This was during the days of the Tea Party movement, and Rasmussen and Schoen found substantial data indicating that the old political divides between left versus right, liberal versus conservative, they were all dying away. And a new political divide was noticeably redefining American politics. A divide between the people versus the political class, the ruled versus the rulers, the ordinary American versus the oligarch, as it were. Voters were increasingly rejecting the horizontal opposition of Republican versus Democrat, and instead seeing themselves in a vertical opposition as being in direct conflict with politicians from both parties who are perceived as ruling top down for their own benefit at the expense of the constituents they supposedly represented. And we're seeing this in real time. Back in 1964, 70% of the American electorate believed the government was being run for the benefit of all. Today, that number has plummeted to just 19%. 8 in 10 Americans believe the government is run for the benefit of the rich and powerful. Keep that in mind. Remember that 8 in 10 believe the government today is run for the benefit of the rich and the powerful. The other 2 in 10, I'm assuming they're the rich and the powerful. Now, what's so interesting here is that Rasmussen and Schoen were uncovering this paradigm shift here in the States at the very same time British scholar Matthew Goodwin found virtually the same paradigm shift happening all throughout Europe. Upwards of 70% of Europeans overall believe that their government and their politicians rule in accordance with the values, interests, and concerns of a political class, not the people. 70% of Europeans across the continent believe that your average MP, your average member of parliament, does not care about them. And they're right. While surveys show that the vast majority of the British population believe that immigration is detrimental to society, less than 20% of their politicians agree. There is a massive chasm of opinion and sentiment between the people and their politicians. And the numbers have only gotten worse since these studies. The first one was in 2010, the second was in 2016. Every poll out there now today, every poll shows that Americans' trust in our establishment institutions has imploded. The latest Gallup polling shows a record low level of trust for the presidency, for Congress, for our legal system, our medical system, big business, big tech, and most especially the legacy media. Is it any wonder? Do you remember what I said? I gave you a little stat here. How 8 in 10 people believe that government runs for the benefit of itself and of those in power. Trafalgar just did a study a couple of months ago, and they found that exactly 79% of Americans, again, 8 in 10, believe we live in a two-tier justice system that protects the establishment, the wealthy, the powerful, at the expense of average citizens. This is delegitimation. This is the increasing loss of confidence and trust in our public institutions, regulations, and authorities that govern our society. And if you want to know where delegitimation ultimately leads, just take a look at the Berlin Wall today. Just ask the surviving members of the Soviet Politburo what happens when delegitimation reaches critical mass among populations. Gang, that is what we are ultimately seeing today. We are seeing a regime that is crumbling under the weight of its own delegitimation. That's what last night was ultimately all about. The very fact that you had so many talking heads last night in legacy media trying to prop Biden up artificially only further exacerbates the delegitimacy. There's no way around this. This regime is in its dying throes. Now is the time for us to end this empire once and for all and begin together to endeavor a great and lasting Republican renewal. Over to you, gang. Well, Josh, our moderator, assembles your questions. Again, if you're just joining us, if you want to ask a question, because YouTube has demonetized our channel, just click on that link below. Join our Insiders Club and ask me your questions through that platform. It's just $5 a month. You can ask me as many questions as you like. Join.turleytalks.com. Also, as you know, if you're a regular to this channel, you know we're all about building the future now by creating a parallel economy dedicated to faith, family, and freedom. And ironically, we can build that economy by learning how to use the very corruption of our ruling political class against them. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Politicians like Nancy Pelosi have been getting insider trading secrets for decades now, enabling their returns to beat the market every single year. But thanks to a little-known SEC database, guess what? We can have access to that very same trading secrets as well that these politicians have. We get to see the stocks corporate CEOs are buying up in real time, and then we get to piggyback on those trades to gain the same advantage for ourselves that Pelosi and the crooks in D.C. have. My friend Ross Givens has been tracking insider trading for years now, and his recommendations have led to investment returns of over 200%. Some have hit as high as nearly 1,500%. And now it's your turn. Click on that link below right now and learn how you too can learn to trade like Pelosi. Click on that link and learn how to gain an insider advantage for yourself today. All right, gang, what do we got? What's our questions? Again, I do have a hard stop at 12:30. I got to keep an eye on that. What do we got? Tony, why is your political color scheme the reverse of the rest of the world? Red is socialist everywhere else. I'm from the UK. Oh, the UK. All right. I was like, was it my books back there? What is? I'm from the UK, and I'm currently a candidate for Reform UK. God bless you guys. You guys are rocking. Number one, Tony. God bless you on that. I fully admit I was wrong. I thought the old Brexit party was kind of dead and buried just because of the paralysis inherent in UK politics. And you guys are rocking. I mean, you are growing by the day. I mean, you're like Bitcoin. Well, hopefully you're not as volatile as Bitcoin. Hopefully you're only surging like Bitcoin. I mean, it's really exciting to see. I mean, you may be overtaking the Tories very soon. I'm very excited about that. To be honest with you, I have no idea why our red and our blue is the opposite of Europe and Canada. No idea. And Australia, New Zealand. No idea. You stumped me. I always, when I'm doing cross the pond interviews or even Canadian interviews, I often, I was actually just doing an Australian interview not too long ago. I often have to remind them our red states are your blue states and blah, blah, blah. But I don't know why. It's a good question. I have to find out. Missy, when you can afford the best in the business to prep a rebuttal, why is this what they came up with? I was wondering who was going to ask about Katie Britt. All right. Well, why is this the best they can make? It was so fake. How can they not do better? Thank you for that question, Missy. And you said it really, really, really well. It's the Republican establishment. They are a bunch of losers. As it turns out, Ronna McDaniel's just the tip of the iceberg. These guys suck. They absolutely suck. They are about 20 years behind the political 8-ball here. Now, in fairness, I think last night's rebuttal by Katie Britt, I think that was more a missed opportunity. I don't think anything bad happened as a result of. So I think that's what, in effect, you're saying is that we had a perfect opportunity to just hit a massive home run after that disaster of a State of the Union, and we didn't. We put this suburbanite woman in a kitchen of all places too. It was just, even CNN was pointing out how weird that was. I mean, look, the GOP's 20 years behind. They still believe CNN. They believe New York Times. They believe that their weakness is suburban women and that they have to win suburban women, which is Rich Barris of the People's Fund in minute detail shows literally every week on his channel. No, they do not. They do not have to reach out to suburban women. Suburban women are a shrinking electorate. They are becoming less and less a portion of the overall electorate. They are shrinking. It's the working class, both white and non-white, that the Republicans need to make inroads with, because if they do, they have destroyed permanently the blue wall of the Democrats. Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, Pennsylvania, maybe someday, Minnesota. They've already got Ohio. Ohio's pretty wrapped up. But it's the working class vote that's the decisive vote in Arizona, in Georgia, as well as the blue wall. And suburbanite women are irrelevant to it. So they're just pathetic. And Trump is going to have to completely revamp the advisor class in the Republican Party, because they're still living as if, it's 2000 and Karl Rove is in charge, and Bush's electorate that barely won him Ohio and Florida is still in place. That electorate's dead. It's gone. It doesn't exist. And just ask Nikki Haley. It's dead. So stop trying to get suburban women. It's just, yes, it's maddening. Thank you, Missy. Now you got me riled up, Missy. Thanks a lot. Gregory, what would you consider a cheat-proof margin in the 7 swing states? For instance, do we have to win by 5% so they can't manufacture many fake votes? I've heard studies. I've heard anywhere between 2 to 3%. I hear it's not that high, but in an election that comes down to 10,000 votes, that's huge. But yes, if we get 5%, as I understand it, we're way beyond the margin of fraud. The only fraud they can really concoct, because fraud is not easy. Fraud can be caught and can be caught very easily. it was easy back in 2020 because, again, all they did is they just found every single citizen on the planet, every single registered name on the planet, filled out a ballot form, basically sent it to them to get a signature back. And if they didn't get the signature back, they just forged it and threw it in to the ballot harvesting boxes. So that's basically what happened in 2020. They're not going to be able to do that again. But even then, this is what you got to get, Greg, with all of that fraud, even then, Biden won by only 40,000 votes, right? Georgia, Arizona, and Wisconsin. 20,000 Wisconsin, 10 in Georgia and Arizona. He only won by 40,000 votes. Even with all those efforts. Remember, Biden was underperforming everywhere except for those five states, adding into that Michigan and Pennsylvania. For the exception of those states, he underperformed everywhere. He overperformed in those states. And even with the most massive of shenanigans that they believe, from the way they're acting, they believe they're not going to be able to reproduce in 2024. I won't take that for granted, but they're not going to be able to reproduce that. Even with all those shenanigans, they can only pull it off by a few thousand votes. So yes, a 5% margin will crush it. So, and that's what we're seeing. He's got Georgia locked up. That looks like that's done, and Arizona looks like it's locked up. Biden just doesn't. I mean, Sinema actually had to bow out just to give him a chance to get to win the Senate. So it's going to come down to Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Those are going to be the three states to really keep an eye on. And again, the good news is Trump on some polls is crushing up to 10 points in Michigan. He's crushing it in Wisconsin. He's crushing it in Pennsylvania. So this is all good news. But yes, we're going to have to hope to see about an average of a 5-point lead to make sure to get beyond that 2 to 3% margin of fraud. Thank you, Gregory. Lee Daniels, do you think enough has been done to stop the steal? So that's what we'll get into next week. So make sure to just register down below, and I'll see you next week. I will let you know if enough is being done within the next few months based on the action items I'm giving to you and how well I'm going to check in with the organizations that I'm going to hook you guys up with and see what they think. Daniel, so you think the U.S. is done as a superpower? Not as a superpower. So that's key. Be careful. So I think the U.S. is done as the unipower, the sole superpower in the world. Those days are over. It laid claim to that after 1945, and then that ended up when the Soviets grabbed the bomb, 49, 52, I'm forgetting when. So that ended when the Soviet Union got the bomb. And then it came back again in 91 in that and now the shattered Russian Federation just was in no position whatsoever to offer any major military resistance to anything the United States wanted to do. Obviously, we couldn't invade Russia because they had nukes, but short of that, we could do anything we wanted to. China was still very young, still very very early in their development. So we were able to do whatever we wanted in 1991. So we set up a unipolar world order with the IMF, the WTO, the World Bank, that provided the institutions that created the rules that all member nations were supposed to play by. And in that process over these last 30 years, we've seen a massive, what scholars are calling civilizationalist turn with the rise of civilization states like Orthodox Russia, Confucian China, Hindu India, restoration politics oriented Turkey. We're seeing it even with Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, which is becoming in many ways a superpower. We're seeing it ironically in the second most sanctioned nation in the country, the Shiite Iran. We're seeing the Sahel region develop with Pan-Africanism. We're seeing amazing things going on in Latin America now with Nayib Bukele and adopting Bitcoin as a national currency and the like. So there, with the rise of BRICS and OPEC nations joining in. So the world is just completely different than it was in 1991, totally different. And the United States just doesn't get to, it doesn't get to enforce the world order the way it could back in 91. That's all I'm saying. So now what it has to do is it has to go back to its own civilizational roots, MAGA. And then what we have to do is, and as I think Trump was doing, quite well in his first term. We have to begin bilateral trade agreements with nations on a one-to-one basis, and just get rid of this whole notion that the IMF and the WTO and the World Bank govern the world. They don't anymore. They simply don't. Davos doesn't. The EU doesn't. Because there are multiple worlds, there are multiple civilizations, and those civilization states are creating their own economic bloc. And what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to learn to be able to trade on a one-to-one basis with those nations in ways that benefit Americans, and not default to a one-size-fits-all political and economic system that basically superimposes a global division of labor that ships our manufacturing and factory jobs to third world countries, all as cash and finance and capital are reallocated around our cosmopolitan urban areas, leaving our rural regions highly unemployed. Those days are over. We just can't do things like that anymore. Puppetgate, do you think Kamala's knees are that strong because all the workout she's been doing since Willie? Oh, Puppetgate, you made me read that. You made me, my mom watches it. No. Yeah, she's pretty pathetic. I have not seen a politician so despised by both parties like Kamala. She's pretty pathetic. Sean, Dr. Steve, do you think last night's Palestine, Ohio-sized train wreck viewed worldwide? Wow, I was wondering, did they have another one? Okay, it's a metaphor. All right. Palestine, Ohio-sized train wreck viewed worldwide would be looked at by historians as the night that global liberalism officially died. Whomever decided that putting brain-dead Joe on the world stage last night has the IQ of a rock. Beautifully put. I love that, Sean. It could be. We'll have to see. I mean, romantically, that sounds great. The night it officially died. I mean, when I was reading through the speech, again, this is before I heard any oral delivery, attempted delivery on Biden's part. Just reading through the speech, it did sound like it was the dying throes of an empire. It sounded like, remember last time where I was here, it was Franklin Roosevelt and Hitler was, and now we got Putin and now we got these white supremacists here. And you just kind of went like, boy, you sure have a lot of enemies. It really seems like the world, either externally or internally, really doesn't like you. Maybe you need to revisit why that is. So anyway, we can hope, Sean. We can hope they'll look back at last night and vindicate at least this interpretation I gave to you today. Puppetgate, why is Biden refusing to mention 13 soldiers' names that passed away nearly 3 years ago in Afghanistan? I think you know the answer to that, PG. It's because he's ultimately responsible for that. And he's not responsible for anything except for things that are good. The Daniels, I also don't like the new strategy of attaching IVF to abortion. Have you noticed? Yeah, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. I know that's what he's doing. I know that's what Democrats are doing. I don't know how many Republicans are doing that. IVF is actually, ironically, is very, very controversial in Europe, particularly in Italy, where they have much more strict IVF laws than they even do over abortion. I just wouldn't worry about it right now. It's just all theater. What you have to remember, what last night, here's the way to look at what this IVF linking with abortion. What you have to understand, I'm not kidding when I said last night's speech was desperate. It was a desperate speech trying to rally the Democrat base. That's part of the key to understand what happened last night. Last night should have expanded the base. Biden needed to appeal to voters beyond Democrats. But we have to understand, as we saw with the Palestinian protesters, Biden's losing his own party. So last night was an appeal to hardcore pro-abortion Dems. Now, I know IVF isn't hardcore pro, but that's what he's trying to gin up these pro-abortion sentiments, reproductive autonomy sentiments because he feels like he's losing his party. And I think that's why his speech sounded so desperate. Matt, if the election is not rigged and Trump wins, do you think there will be a snowball effect of Democrats being voted out of office? If you're talking about that night, yeah, if Trump wins by a big enough margin, and if the Republicans literally get their shit together and they kick out these idiots that put Katie Britt in to give the official rebuttal, and kick out the McDaniels of the party, who were part of the advisor class, who were just disasters. The more I think about, Frank Luntz, these guys are just Democrats. They're just Democrat operatives that have basically made their way into the Republican Party. But if they do that, yes, I think it will be a magnificent night for MAGA. I think it'll be extraordinary because I just think the sentiments of the country have largely grown in that direction. No, not necessarily in cities, but ironically, Trump is winning a lot of cities. Rich Barris was saying the other day, if the election were held today, Trump would win Miami-Dade. Trump would win Miami-Dade. The Cuban and Venezuelan vote has gone MAGA. He will win Miami-Dade. That's unthinkable. That's like, that's absolutely, utterly unthinkable. It's like winning Baltimore County. All right. So we're seeing a major paradigm shift here, and the Democrats are on the wrong side of it. Mary, what do you make of Johnson nodding his head in agreement to support? Oh, in support for Ukraine? Yeah, no. Again, it's a dying empire. It's a dying empire, and right now, the connective tissue that holds it all together in both parties is empire. Like when you get elected to Washington, D.C., this is unless you're someone like a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a Matt Gaetz. If you get elected to Washington, D.C., you are not elected anymore as a representative of your home constituency. You are now representative of the unipolar international order. That's why our news is more interested in the borders of countries 10,000 miles away than our own. All right. That's why they will shut down legislation if it doesn't have funding for Ukraine's borders, but they won't give a rip about funding ours. So you just have to understand we are in a unipolar moment inside DC. What's so frustrating is no one else in the world sees it. 90% of the world's population is not sanctioning Russia. Let that hit you. 90% of the world's population is not sanctioning Russia. 90% of the world's population has no problem with Russia. It's not right or wrong. It's not prescriptive. This is descriptive. We believe we are ruling a world where 90% of the population thinks we're a bunch of clowns. That's why I think Biden's dementia is symbolic of the empire itself. And unfortunately, yeah, Mike Johnson is going to play the game. Period. Now, he's learning that game is coming to an end. I think they're getting that sense. But until it finally comes to an end, they're just going to keep going. They're just, yep, that's right. Yep, we're going to send all those billions to the military-industrial complex. And boy, when I retire, man, my pot of gold is coming. Not even before they retire. What am I talking about? They get it as congressmen. So, Franz Paul, what impact has BRICS had on the enforcement of U.S. sanctions abroad? Enormous. Absolutely enormous. I don't know if it's BRICS per se. That's a good question. I don't know if it's BRICS per se, but so BRICS right now, with the inclusion of the OPEC countries, UAE, Iran, Saudi Arabia, BRICS makes up, I read, just over 40% of the world's gross domestic consumption. That is about 10% more than the G7. If I recall, G7 is about 30%. And And the sanction and being part of BRICS means you're part of China's parallel economy. China is one big massive 1.4, 20% of the world's population, 1.4 billion person parallel economy. They literally created parallel everything in China. So you have Union Pay, right? Union Pay is the Chinese version of Visa and MasterCard. Union Pay, my son and I were just at a Chinese buffet last week, and they had that on their door as you're walking in. We take Union Pay here. I was like, whoa, he knows it too. He's a geopolitical nerd. Union Pay is bigger than MasterCard and Visa right now. Union Pay is bigger than MasterCard and Visa. So MasterCard and Visa sanction Russia. What does Russia do? No problem. They use Union Pay. And Ruski Mir. Ruski Mir is used all over the Russian world. Literally means that, the Eurasian world. Or take KIPS. KIPS is the financial transaction platform parallel to SWIFT. SWIFT was the default international financial transaction platform. Russia's central bank was sanctioned from SWIFT. They weren't allowed to use SWIFT. No problem. They went and they used KIPS. So all of this is part of a parallel world that's rising that recognizes that they need to have self-sufficient, independent financial infrastructures that can bypass any shenanigans imposed upon them by the empire. And so BRICS has just been huge, to the extent that BRICS is a part of that, just been huge in enabling Russia to withstand U.S. sanctions. Number one sanctioned nation on the planet, and yet they are financially flourishing. There's just no way around it. Rich, Dr. C was thrilled that Mitch McConnell was stepping down as minority leader. Amen, Rich. However, it irritated me that he isn't going to do so for 8 months, granted. Well, they never do, Rich. They never. I guess not. McCarthy did. But after 8 months after the November election, it seems to me that he thought he was going to be replaced and made the announcement to extend his role so he could hurt the Republican chances and keep them in the minority in the Senate. It could be. I wouldn't. Again, these guys are very bitter guys. I wouldn't put it past them. The only pushback I would give you on that is that he did endorse Trump. He didn't have to. He could have pulled a Romney. He could have pulled a Hillary Haley. He could have gone full Cheney and 3-inch heels, but he didn't. He recognized and even said it in his speech. It's a new Republican Party. It's a MAGA party. It's a nationalist populist party. It's a working class party, and it's a civilizationalist party. It sees itself in opposition to the establishment Washington powers that be, of which he is probably the ultimate symbol. So he recognized there's just no place for him anymore. And he graciously, he did, you got to give him credit. He graciously turned around and endorsed Trump. So it's got my full support. So we'll see. I don't think he's going to be much of a factor going in. I get the sense he's not going to give the media the little talking points the little sound bites they want that he did back in 2022. He was extremely demoralizing in 2022, saying, "Oh, well, there's no way we're going to win the Senate now that we have all these crazy MAGA people running." That's like, dude, just shut your freaking mouth. All as he's working behind the scenes with McCarthy to thwart the MAGA movement at every step of the way. And then when they get thwarted, they turn around, they blame Trump. Well, those days I think are done. We'll see though. Rich, is there any way to remove McConnell before November election, or at least take control of the Senate fund from him? I don't know. I don't know how much he's even controlling the funds at this point. Good question, but no, I don't think so. It's very hard to remove a senator. I don't even know if you can actually impeach a senator. So. JJ Mid-South, the Arabs threatened to withhold their vote for Biden due to his handling of the Middle East events. Trump gets it in. He'll support the Israelis. Then what do the winners and criers do? Well, yeah, Trump. Trump has been pretty vocal in terms of just wanting to end the war. Same with Ukraine. So, but he and Bibi Netanyahu are good buddies. Certainly much closer than Aboud in among the Palestinian authorities. So, in one sense, I think it's it's a performative act of frustration. The pro-Palestinians just feel like they've got nothing else other than to say, look, the next guy may not be much better, but we're going to make sure that you who are in power, who are doing nothing, ain't going to be there anymore. Yeah, something akin to that. Charles, Dr. Steve, why isn't anybody investigating if and how much the cartels are paying the left to keep the borders open? That's a great question. And you know what? You reminded me of something. I do want to follow up with something on those cartels. I don't know the answer to that. I would assume Tucker has got some people on it, and I could certainly see it's true. Yeah, I would love to see O'Keefe Media investigating that behind the scenes as well. I think that would be shocking if that came out. That's a great question, Charles. But I don't know the answer to that. Joshua, Yeshua, did anyone notice that Biden forgot to give the State of the Union written speech to Speaker Mike Johnson after Biden was done babbling? Maybe because he was afraid he'd rip it up like Nancy or something. I did not notice that. Again, like I said, I tend to read these things as opposed to listen to them just to really get the substance of what's being said. So there you go. Yeah, he's just a goon at this point. Rumble chat, thank you, sir. Polymander, someone needs to do a side-by-side comparison of Trump's last State of the Union and Biden's. That's good. Which one is lying and which one is telling the truth? Which one is uniting or dividing? Which one is the party? I don't know what the last part is, but I think that's really neat. That'd be really cool to kind of hold side by side. It's very, very good. Even on the abortion issue, remember one of the things that Trump kept calling out is how extreme and insane, particularly like the New York state legislature, the abortion laws that they're passing. He said, I mean, this is insane. Obviously, we could agree, all right, maybe 15 weeks, 12 weeks, 15 weeks, first trimester. Again, a hardcore pro-lifer, which I am, will have to swallow something big there. Oh, wait a minute now. But that would be that 80% of the population agrees with that. There are things we can do to agree with. Democrats have no interest in agreement, none whatsoever. What they do is they push the politics of resentment, because as long as we're divided, as long as we resent each other, our resentment can never be projected onto them. And that's what makes Trump so dangerous. Is Trump takes the politics of resentment and he recasts it onto the appropriate objects of that resentment, and that's the permanent political class. And in so doing, unites the people. That's why I think you're seeing his numbers grow so astronomically right now. Thank you, Polymander. Franz, is Fannie Willis's expansion of the term mattress money an example of hyper-normalization? Franz, you have too much time in your hands. That is good. You made a joke about hyper-normalization. All right, I'm Josh. If you're hearing that, this guy, we gotta have a special we are making some really interesting, cool items for you guys. We gotta have a special award for Franz Paul. He made a joke about hyper-normalization, and he brought Fannie Willis and mattress money into dude. That's genius. Josh just said nice, haha. Genius, Franz. Steve, the Biden administration has just admitted to secretly flying into airports all over America 320,000 illegal aliens. Yeah, we did a video on that, Steve, a couple of days ago. It was it's beyond infuriating. It really is. It's absolutely beyond. And his reason for doing it, apparently, that was admitted in court due to a Freedom of Information Act case, was that they wanted to lower the numbers of illegal immigrants coming across the border, but they obviously didn't want to lower the numbers that were actually in. No, I mean this is why the whole Laken Riley thing really should be a rallying call for everyone who still has some semblance of a classical moral sense, that she should be alive today. But were it not for, she would be alive today, but were it not for Biden's policies, just no way around that. Rich, Dr. Steve, is there any way to remove McConnell? We already talked about that. Travis, good morning, Dr. Steve. What do you think of Biden's unhinged address? How do you think it will play out in the general election? Travis, are you just a latecomer? My whole talk was on that. In a nutshell, I believe the State of the Union address were the rantings of the end of empire. That's what it. And again, that really came across to me as I read it. I read the transcript of it, and it just sounded like it was the rantings of a clueless, dying, decrepit leader of a clueless, dying, decrepit empire. That's what it sounded to me as. No, I don't think it moved the needle, by the way. Not at all. Philip, red is for the blood of patriots, shed for freedom from the tyrants. I love it. I love it, Philip. I know that is on our red, white, and blue on the flag. I don't know if that's dude, I'm with you. I mean, if that, I don't mind. I think that should, exactly what you just said, that should be the reason why we're red and they're blue. It's not because of communism. It's because of the blood shed on behalf of freedom. I love it. I do. I don't know what the original reason is for it. That was my point. But you're getting another one of those awards once we get them. Brooks, Kelly, after the State of the Union address, does Biden have any friends left they can turn into enemies? Yeah, it was insane. I mean, again, it's this practice of resentment politics. Resentment politics, historically speaking, if you go back to the speeches in ancient Athens, right, ancient Greece, I say restoration politics. Resentment politics always involved the outsider. It always involved the enemy from abroad. Hannibal, Carthage is going to come and get us if we Romans don't stand up. Or you read speeches from Constantinople, warning about the impending invasion from the east. What makes our resentment politics so disgusting is our leaders found out in the 60s and 70s that they could foment resentment within our nation, internally, domestically, to have us fighting each other, so as to keep resentment away from them. Because just ask Marie Antoinette what happens when the people begin to resent their leaders, right? So leaders have always pointed to some object of resentment to channel resentment away from them towards somebody else. Historically, it's always been the outsider. It's always been some kind of foreign invader, possible foreign invader. Today, among particularly the Democrats, it's us. It's the people. We are every bit the enemy that the perpetrators of 9/11 are. That's what they're doing, and it's disgusting and it's sick. And again, it's the antics of an empire in its throes. Wendy, do you hear that heckler from last night was the father? Yes, of one of our lost soldiers from the withdrawal in Afghanistan. He was arrested after his removal. I was going to put that in, and just because of time, I didn't. But yes, I saw that Gold Star Dad, and that was just, again, it just says it all. Doesn't matter who you are to these people. If you dissent from their regime, you're an enemy. Period. End of discussion. Doesn't matter who you are. They have literally no sympathy or empathy for you at all if they deem you an enemy. Period. Rumble chat, thank you for that, sir. Do you think the demon rats in the House will draft a law to remove Trump from the ballot now that the Supreme Court has ruled? They've already said they're going to do that. Mike Johnson's like, give me a break. I mean, you actually think I'm going to bring that up to it? He's not even going to bring it up for a vote. I mean, it's not going to happen. So, but they may do it again, just try to rally their base, since their base is degenerating. Joan, why do even conservatives call No Labels a centrist group? I joined it out of curiosity and stay to snoop on them, and I see them as leftists. Yeah. Some others in it do too, but we get drowned out by the crazies. Yeah, no question. I mean, no labels is just another. It's just another political organization. Honestly, Joan, to be a money laundering organization. Ideology means nothing anymore in DC, period, end of discussion. It means nothing. It's all money, all power, all affluence, all connections, all influence. Has nothing to do with ideology whatsoever. So no labels is just that. That's all it is. It's just it's a shakedown effort. But it will attract the left-wing ideologues for whom ideology and politics is a religion. It will do that, and I think that's what's happening. But I don't think you have to worry about new labels. They're just there to try to funnel some of the money over into their coffers. That's all they're doing. Lee Daniels, you should do a story on how they are booking illegals who commit crimes as white. Same reasoning of flying immigrants. Yeah. No, it's just, again, it's part of it's just part of the lies. It's part of this just insane, crazy phenomenon that brought down the Soviet Union. I mean, there's no way around it. So yeah, I think these are things. These carry their own penalties. That hyper-normalization we talk about it just carries it entails its own demise. Linda, Dr. Steve, 8 months with an election is a lifetime. Just as hardened criminals threaten, deny, manipulate, obfuscate, and point fingers to deflect from their criminality, it seems that the Dems will continue to heighten their corrupt efforts, flooding in illegals, using cartels, increasingly threatening peace, and pull the wool over the American people's eyes. Just how much preparation should we be doing? Well, a lot. No question. No, absolutely, Linda. And again, this is what we'll be talking about next week. So click on the link below. Join our pop-up event next week. It'll be off platform. We'll have a virtual platform that you can come to and check it out. And I'm going to give you 3 strategies that I think they do address a lot of these concerns that you have. Philip, State of the Onion redress. The only thing left for them to do is cry. I love it. I love that confidence. Absolutely. They are pretty pathetic. And it was. And you could tell it was pretty pathetic. And people recognized it too. Joan, how about blue for Democrats because they are oxygen deprived from hyperventilating? I love it. Red for the spilled blood defending liberty. Blue for the oxygen deprivation of hyperventilating. I love it. Love it. Love it. Oh my, we've got lots of awards today. And that's it, gang. All right. God bless. If you're in the Vegas area, make sure you stop by. I'll be there tomorrow. I'll be signing some books. Stop by the table. I'd love to meet you in person. God bless, gang. Have a wonderful